Heaven Blues Channel presents exclusively Paranormal, Book 9, Part 2, Legend of the Pharaoh's Curse, by Dr. Ahmed Khaled Tawfiq. Part 2, On the Pharaoh's Curse. Get out, you who come in the dark and enter sneakily. Did you come to kiss this child? I won't allow you to kiss him. Did you come to take him? I won't allow you to take him from me. I have sheltered him from you with the afath plant, which hurts you, and with the onions which harm you, and with the honey which tastes sweet in the living's mouth and bitter in the mouth of the dead. A pharaoh's spell to protect the child, attributed to Isis. So, fortunately, you have found the tomb of a pharaoh's vampire. I said it while sipping from the coffee they presented to me, while sitting at the boardroom table, ignoring the fact that all eyes were on me with curiosity. Dr. Ramsey said, with a phony smile, "We never for a second claimed that, Dr. Rifat. The existence of an intact, unrotten corpse containing no blood does not prove the existence of a vampire. It just implies something mysterious." He reached for a large file and started taking out some pictures from it and placing them in front of me. Pictures of some pharaoh's tomb, and of a beautiful sarcophagus, and of some men smiling at the camera, and of a thief's corpse looking terrified. He then pulled out 5 photographs which I recognized immediately. These are the photos of the scientists who met 2 days ago to open the coffin. All of them are top-notch Egyptologists, science from Egypt and the rest of the world. And all of them met their demise in mysterious circumstances. And on all their faces the same mysterious expression? Ramsey replied, "And their veins all empty of blood in the same manner." "And that's why you kept it a secret?" "Scaring the general public is not good for anyone." He then turned to one of the generals sitting with us, one not in uniform, but his sharp looks, broad shoulders, everything, spoke of him being a powerful, lifelong military man. Their features never change. "And now General Marad will speak to us on the security aspects of what happened." Scratching his neck, searching for the right words, the general then smiled and said in a reserved voice, "The whole story is a unique compilation of question marks. For all these men participated in examining the mummy. One was even the photographer of the picture you just saw. And afterwards they went home. So what happened? In 2 cases the scientist was monk-like in his dedication to his work, a bachelor who lived alone. And in the morning comes the housekeeper or the sister to find the scene we all expect. And in the other 3 cases, the scientist goes to the bathroom or stays home alone or wakes up in the night and goes to the balcony. And then comes his wife to find the same scene. It's unnecessary to say that we did not find any footprints or fingerprints or witnesses to any of this, or evidence of a struggle or even a theft. And the forensics? Nothing except what we've just said. No trace of blood in the veins. But no holes in the neck either, if that's what you're thinking. And did the scientists suffer from any disease? Smiling wearily, the general said, "Of course there has to be some diabetes or hypertension, etc. All just normal problems we all have. But the common finding was a shocked, tearful lady who claims incessantly that the deceased was in good health and had no complaints. Then none of them was found with the infamous fever that marks the Pharaoh's curse?" I'm not a medical expert, but I'm not certain that the answer is no. Dr. Ramsey's voice came laughingly, saying, "Here you go, Dr. Rifat, finally speaking of the Pharaoh's curse." Lighting a cigarette, I asked, curious, "Is there another way of looking at and contemplating this?" Ramsey asked, "Do you know something of this Pharaoh curse?" I looked at him, and my brain wandered through time and space. "Do you know something of this Pharaoh curse?" Sure, I know. And who amongst us doesn't know? For I, in the bleak days that followed my meeting with Dracula in 1959, hid in my Dutli apartment, behind my bedroom door strung with garlic, and amused myself by reading many books about the Pharaoh's curse. What a mood, and what a hobby! And with cups of thick black tea and cigarettes, I started realizing that this heinous myth, the myth of the Pharaoh's curse, by nature arouses debate. How did this myth start, anyway? Many archaeologists had met their demise, but the story did not find its way into the public consciousness until the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb at the hands of Carter and Lord Carnarvon in 1922, after a full 6 years of struggle. Death will slaughter with its wings all who dare to disturb the pharaoh's tomb. I am the protector of the pharaoh's tomb who pushes thieves away using the desert heat. That is how the tomb unmistakably warned them. But they insisted to the extent of ignoring all these warning curses, insisted to the point of hiding these inscriptions from the excavation workers, so as not to terrify them. The problem with Tutankhamun is that he died so young, too young to make protection for his tomb himself. Therefore, the high priests adopt this job and use the best magical techniques and latest technology for protecting graves in those ancient times. Do you know something of this pharaoh curse? Of course I know. I know that 13 people who opened the tomb in a formal celebration had met their demise, and the first of them was Lord Carnarvon himself, who started feeling strange with a high fever and shakes, and all the doctors were wondrous. Is it malaria, or blood poisoning, or is it... At midnight, the Lord died in Cairo. And the strange thing is that all of Cairo experienced an unexplained power outage at the exact time of his death. And after that, the sickle of death began gathering the heads of those who sullied the grave, leaving no clear explanation for their deaths. Always it's the fever that confounds the doctors, then the death that directly follows their visit to the tomb, which leaves little chance for coincidence. And here is Carter, the young secretary, dying without a clear explanation, followed by his father's suicide while mourning his son, and during the funeral procession, the horse carrying the coffin trampled a young boy, killing him. Do you know something of this pharaoh curse? Of course I do. Even if I did not know back then what would happen after 4 years, when the British scientist Walter Emery would find a statue of Osiris during his search in Saqqara for the tomb of the genius engineer pharaoh Amenhotep, and on the same night his unexplained death right in front of his Egyptian assistant's eyes. But certainly I know what happened to the Egyptologist Champollion, who broke the code of hieroglyphics and died young, unexplainedly, immediately upon his return from Egypt. And I know that the renowned doctor Theodore Bilharz, the namesake of the disease bilharzia or schistosomiasis, had died with an unexplained fever 2 days after his visit to Luxor with the wife of Duke Ernest I. And I know many similar stories, all of people who met their demise with a sudden fever, delirium, and shakes. And Amun's high priest deviously repeated, "Wake up from your unconsciousness, for you will defeat every one of your enemies so that they cease to exist." Then the death of Dr. Douglas Deary and the chemist Alfred Lucas after their autopsy of a pharaoh who died 3,300 years before. Do you know something of the pharaoh curse? Of course I do. I swallowed hard and looked at Dr. Ramsay for a moment, then mumbled, "I've heard a lot about it." Rubbing his hands together, he exclaimed, "Here we are confronting a new pattern. What glory!" "So, what do you want from me?" "What a question," Ramsay replied, laughing until his eyes teared up and he brought his glasses down his nose in order to read better. Looking at the file before him, he said, "What we want from you is proof or denial of the existence of an infectious disease in this mummy, a disease which dries the blood in the veins and causes a concomitant state of terror." Mr. Mohammed Ragab looked at me curiously and asked, "Is there such a disease in medical history?" Looking at him, my mind wandered once again. 5 years ago, I was there at the conference of Dr. Azzeddin Taha, the professor in Cairo University, and he did not know me. But I was among the seated there, listening carefully to the results of the long, tiring research this renowned scientist had done while searching for the secret of the pharaoh's curse. And he was assuring us that the fungus Aspergillus nigra, which thrives and reproduces freely in the pharaoh's gravesites and infects all those who deal in papyrus, was the reason, in his opinion, behind a large number of deaths of archaeologists. I was there, and I liked his scientific meticulousness. Congratulating him after the conference, I promised him several visits to discuss this topic more. And I did not know it was the last time. He died in a horrific car crash shortly after the conference, and the question remains without answer. Scientists spoke about fungi and poisons that had possibly been spread by pharaohs on their tombs, and about bacteria that thrives on mummies' skin, and about the nuclear rays from the layer of uranium that the high priests had used to paint the tombs, and about the universal rays that they activated to protect the tombs. But the door remains closed, rays and horror and hearts, for no human dared to break it, and no human had found its key, and because no similar disease as far as I know. In a dry manner, Dr. Ramsay said, "But surely you will search for it." This is science, no previous orders, no assumptions. The experiment is the only measurement. In the past, scientists would find solutions for all universal problems in seconds, and the opinions of Galenos and Aristotle were enough to answer practically all questions, despite being wrong, most of it. As for the Renaissance and the rise of meticulous scientific thought, what we know is much less, but very accurate and correct. Courteously, Dr. Ramsay said, "Modern science is the disappointing truth for hope, while the old science was fun imaginings. It's saddening that copper cannot turn into gold, but it is the disappointing truth. But modern science assures you that one day you can do so if you have an advanced atomic accelerator." Ramsay's mind wandered for a moment. Then he returned to rubbing his hands together, saying, "Let's get back to our topic at hand." Those seated looked at me to see my reaction to his request. "Are you willing to inspect the mummy?" How would I answer him? These gentlemen are awaiting my answer, so don't be stingy with your opinions. Should I inspect it? Okay. I was going to suggest such to you, that I'm not courageous. It's only that I'm curious, more curious than I should be. The Brits say that curiosity kills the cat. I did not realize the truthfulness of that statement until now, and I did not picture myself as an old cat. I was, as I've told you in every story, extraordinarily naive. 3. The closed door. Why did I accept? Because there's something called curiosity, and something called embarrassment of appearing like a coward, and something called scientific integrity, and something called doing a thing because you won't trust anyone else to do it, and won't be comfortable with their conclusions. I know myself, and unlike others, I won't die that simply, and if I met my demise, that would be an unmistakable proof of the Pharaoh curse's existence, that proof that I wouldn't trust so much if the deceased was someone else. You understand me, don't you? Morning, January 21st. In the storeroom they prepped for me, I stand next to the only idiot who agreed to assist me in the task, Mr. Mohammed Ragab. Of course, there were some important people waiting outside, and here a young photographer named Nader carrying a small video camera, a few meters away from us, ready to video the full autopsy. Lighting the strong spotlight they had prepped for us, I then started the precautionary procedures I had patiently prepped, and went around the coffin with the Geiger counter to ensure the absence of any radiation, which was a possibility. Then I turned on the vacuum so that nothing would get into my lungs during the autopsy. After that I wore gloves and donned a mask, not like the surgical masks, but rather one of those gas masks. And with that, there was only one thing left I had not accounted for: the black magic, the high priest's magic. And even, in that regard, I recited some verses from Quran, and as soon as I was done, I felt confidence filling my soul. Slowly but surely, we pushed the lid off the coffin. The previous visitors before us had stolen the outer golden inscriptions. Therefore, it was easy to see the king's mummy covered only with silk wrappings and the golden mask resembling Tutankhamun, except that his features lacked the innocence and peace that the latter's features possessed. Very slowly, I took the scalpel and made a small incision in the layers of the wrappings. and then we began removing the degraded layers laterally. It was a slow and dirty task. But we succeeded, finding, as usual, many jewels among the layers of cloth, with spells, that evil unique to the pharaohs. But what caught my attention were some particles randomly spread among the folds of the textile, like very delicate seeds, like snowflakes. And I understand nothing about precious stones, but I think these crystals have nothing to do with that. I lifted a questioning eye to my partner, who shook his head to show he did not exactly understand. He then picked a crystal and regarded it closely between pincers and placed it in a small piece of paper to analyze it later. As for now, the most complicated part is awaiting us, which is to remove the wrappings from the mummy. Mohammed Ragab's face turned ever more yellow. "What a dummy you are." The skin was gray-colored and fragile, and I took and numbered a sample from it. Then I took several samples from the veins and swept the field for histology and placed the samples in sterile test tubes, looking for any microbes. There are no organs," I said wondrously. While fighting the urge to vomit and the sweat gathering on his forehead, Ragab said, "The pharaohs would remove the internal organs because they decay quickly, and they would place them in something called the Canubia vessels. And the heart, they would pull it out and put it in its place, a sacred beetle brooch." He then continued wondrously, "The weird thing here is that this mummy is from the 6th dynasty, and usually this intestinal removal goes back to the 12th dynasty. Then the deceased was ahead of his time." And here I heard the sound of someone falling. He did it, the idiot. I will never understand how a grown man allows himself to faint, especially in such crucial times like this. The door opened and Dr. Ramsay came rushing in along with 2 others, looking terrified. Yet they could not approach any further. The cameraman was the same. They asked me in unison, "Is he dead?" Putting my samples into my bag, I responded carelessly, "Of course not. It's just his vagovasal reflex is working overtime." "Should we call an ambulance for him?" "No need for that. He'll come to in a moment. And if he doesn't, an atropine injection will do the job." I then started covering the mummy and returning the jewels to their place. I asked the kid with the camera to help me cover the coffin. And since I had already closed my samples bag, I stuffed the small paper into the pack of cigarettes. I took off the gloves and threw them in the bucket of formalin, along with the rest of my surgical equipment. I then stood over the blacked-out idiot and slapped and pinched his cheeks a few times until he opened his eyes. Going out to Dr. Ramsay's office, carrying my bag, I lit a cigarette and asked for a cup of coffee, no sugar. And I started telling him about our findings. And he showed unusual interest in the absence of internal organs in this mummy from the 6th dynasty. Such people care about endless trivials. Everything surrounding this pharaoh is very strange. And what about all the spells we found? As usual, it all speaks of destroying the home and bringing destruction on anyone who dares disturb the pharaoh's rest. Strangely here, all of it depicted pictures of Set, goddess of evil for the pharaohs, although it's customary to find pictures of Osiris. And here entered Mohammed Ragab, wobbly and appearing weak. He sat in a corner chair drinking the fizzy brought to him. "You are too sensitive, my friend." "And you have none." "Thank you." Hitting buttons on the phone, Dr. Ramsay said, "When can we expect your report?" "Not before 2 weeks. I'm going to take blood and tissue samples, run tests, and then make aerobic and anaerobic cultures and wait for any bacterial growth. Then there are some complicated cultures involving fungal growth." Putting the phone to his ear, awaiting a response, he said, "As we told you, complete secrecy. We'll put the Health Ministry's labs under your discretion, so there's no chance for questions and curiosity within the college. Hello? Dr. Shacker? How are you doing? You should receive the samples within the hour. Thank you." He put down the phone and looked at me. "We don't yet know your general opinion on this whole matter." I have no opinion, and up until now, science does not know of a disease that causes what happened to your scientist and that thief. Maybe it's a new disease? Maybe, and if so, we would have the honor of spreading that disease after having lain dormant all these centuries. Dr. Ramsay smiled mysteriously and said, stressing each letter, "From this moment on, you're the #1 candidate to be this mummy's next victim, Dr. Riffat. And if things go as I expect, we won't find you in our world in 2 weeks. Does that not terrify you? It's only one death, the date and way specified. So if my hour has not come, the mummies from every dynasty would not be able to harm me, even if they still had their guts." His eyes narrowed further, and he said quietly, "You're right, but you're forgetting that which is crueler than death, the horror, the unexplainable horror that turns your life to hell and makes you wish to die." His eyes became fox-like as he repeated, "The horror, my friend, the horror." End of Part 2. Please like and subscribe to our channel for more upcoming audiobooks.